White wine is a wine whose color can be straw yellow, yellow-green, or yellow-gold colored. It is produced by the alcoholic fermentation of the non-colored pulp of grapes, which may have a white or black skin. It is treated so as to maintain a yellow transparent color in the final product. The wide variety of white wines comes from the large number of varieties, methods of winemaking, and also the ratio of residual sugar. White wine has existed for at least 2,500 years. It has accompanied economic development and colonized every country whose inhabitants are wine drinkers. Europe, America, Oceania, although less systematically in Africa and Asia due to climate and religious reasons. The white grapes from which white wine is mainly produced are green or yellow, of which there are many, so that white wine can be produced anywhere that grapes can be grown. Some varieties are well known, such as the Chardonnay, Sauvignon, and Riesling. Others have a discrete existence hidden behind the name of a wine, resulting from the assembly of several varieties. Tokay, sherry, and sauternes are examples of these. The winemaker can also use a variety with a colored skin, provided one is careful not to stain the wort during the separation of the pulp juice. The Pinot Noir, for example, is commonly used to produce champagne. Among the many types of white wine, dry white wine is the most common. More or less aromatic and tangy, it is derived from the complete fermentation of the wort. Sweet wines, whether Moët or liqueur wines, are where the fermentation is interrupted before all the grape sugars are converted into alcohol. This is called mutage or fortification. The methods of enriching wort with sugar are multiple: on ripening on the vine, passerillage, or the use of noble rot. Sparkling wines, which are mostly white wines, are wines where the carbon dioxide from the fermentation is kept dissolved in the wine and becomes gas when the bottle is opened, giving a delicate, foam beverage considered the festive wine par excellence. Celebrated by writers, poets, singers and painters, white wine is used as an aperitif during the meal with dessert, or as a refreshing drink between meals. They are more refreshing, lighter in both style and taste than the majority of the red wine counterparts, making them ideal for spring and summer occasions. The old guideline of white wine with white meat still holds true in many instances, but there are plenty of exceptions and palate preferences that dictate which wines to pair with what foods. As an example, Chardonnay combines well with the taste of fleur-de-lis. White wine also contributes to the development of dishes in the kitchen thanks to its acidity, aroma, and its ability to soften meat and deglaze the cooking juices. Its benefits to the body are, however, lower than those attributed to red wine because it is low in polyphenolic compounds. History. Antiquity. The first trace of wine that has been found dates to 7,500 years ago, in present-day Iran, but the results of archaeological excavations have not been able to determine from which time wine began to be produced. Epigraphy tells us about the presence of wine in the Middle East. It was produced in the High Country, and then imported into Mesopotamia, especially from the 3rd millennium BC. The tablets of Hattusa describes wine with the term Wayana in the Hittite language, Gestin in Sumerian, and Karanu in Akkadian. It could be red, light, good wine, honeyed, new, or sour. In ancient Greece, wine had already been developed and used since Hippocrates, a physician born around 460 BC who commonly prescribed it to patients. Vinous white wine and bitter white wine were used among his remedies, a sign of diversity in production at the time. In Roman times, the type of viticulture practiced by the Greeks was the model for a long time, and production included white wine. Rich Roman patricians organized banquets where where the cost of the food was a sign of prestige. In the range of expensive products, wine played a predominant role. The richest citizens built sumptuous villas in the Bay of Naples where the vine had been cultivated since its introduction by the Greeks. The Amana, more ancient grape, produced a sweet white wine produced as mulled wine resembling modern-day Madeira. The conquering of regions more and more to the north encouraged the Romans to cultivate the vine and to produce lighter and less sweet wines. It also encouraged them to seek new wild varieties adaptable to these distant areas where the Mediterranean varieties showed their limits. For example, vines were planted on the banks of the Rhine to provide the legions with a healthy drink as opposed to water which was rarely drinkable. The wine was drunk cool in summer and warm in winter, a practice which still continues in the 21st century. Middle Ages wine merchants failed to survive the fall of the Western Roman Empire and viticulture declined dramatically. The Germanic tribes preferred to drink beer and did not see the value of the wine trade. The decline of viticulture was intensified when Vikings cut the sea lanes in the Atlantic. In the south, the Saracens were making Gaza raids. These campaigns in southern Europe caused Languedoc, Provence, southern Italy, and the Douro Valley to become depopulated, the people being taken into slavery or fleeing the threat. Knowledge about the culture of grapevines was conserved by the Catholic Church. Wine was necessary for the celebration of Mass, and the monks planted vines at high latitudes and increased the monastic acreages. Difficult to transport and store, wine long remained a product for local consumption. The trade was re-established initially after the enrichment of the nobles and prelates because, as with the Romans, the art of the table reflected the reputation of the host. River trade was of great importance in the development of vineyards. The Germanic countries benefited from the navigability of the Rhine and the Danube so they could export the production. Charlemagne contributed to this growth by enacting his Capitulaire de Ville, which included a set of rules on the cultivation of the vine in all areas. It was an era of great development of the culture of white wine in Germany and Austria. The Central European vineyards reached 100,000 hectares, which was 3.5 times the area in the 1990s. For the 13th century, traders distinguished Vinum Honeycomb, which was drunk by the people, from Vinum Francium, which was the wine for the wealthy aristocracy. There was recognition of varieties of Riesling and Sylvaner from the late Middle Ages. Part of European trade was by sea along the Atlantic coast. The English, then the Dutch and Scandinavians, from the demand for wine, created a craze for planting between Bordeaux and La Rochelle. Little dry white wine was produced for export from La Rochelle, while Bordeaux exported mainly wines from the hinterland received via the Garonne. When wine production was introduced on the banks of the Charente in the 17th century, Charente white wines were introduced as cognac. At the same time, the dry white wine popular with the Dutch was produced to the north, around the port of Nantes from the current areas of Muscadet AOC in Gros Planté OVDQS in the Loire Valley. Vineyards in the Loire Valley and the southwest had their sales network thanks to the navigability of the Loire and the Garonne. In the Mediterranean basin, the Crusades greatly enriched both rival republics of Venice and Genoa. To supply the troops of the rich Frankish lords, these republics provided them with wine from Greece. The port of Monemvasia, which exported a lot of white wine, gave its name to the variety Malvasia. The Crusaders also discovered Muscat wine. Once back home, the rulers and wealthy aristocrats, looking to buy the sweet wines they enjoyed in the East, they came from grapes that dominated the vineyards of Languedoc-Roussillon and Spain. Trade in these wines was facilitated by the high alcohol content, which ensured preservation during the long journey to northern Europe. Modern era. In 1453 the Ottoman Empire took Constantinople and the situation of the Venetians and Genoese deteriorated. The wine trade between the eastern Mediterranean and northern Europe fell sharply. At the same time, the Spanish had just completed the Reconquista and replaced the Mediterranean wine with its own, especially for English and Dutch consumers. The port of San Luca de Barrameda began to export large quantities of white wine, which was the ancestor of today's sherry. This wine was called sack and caused a sensation in England. Even at the height of animosity between the two countries, the trade continued, sometimes provided by pirates who stole what they could not buy. Between 40 and 60,000 barrels each of 500 litres left the Spanish coast annually for England and the Netherlands. For the 16th century, the first European vines were planted in America, in Mexico, then Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. These were in addition to the native vines which grew in Mexico, but this pre-Columbian production was not for the production of wine, as the grapes were too acidic. It was used to produce acajou, a drink sweetened with fruit and honey. The Little Ice Age spelled the death knell of northern viticulture. The vine disappeared from northern Germany and Baden, and the maximum altitude for viticulture descended to 220 meters. Hans Jürgen Otto noted that all the vineyards suffered and decreased in area. In England the vine also disappeared. The less early vineyards preferred to select white varieties of grapes because, even if unripe, white grapes allowed wine that was a little sour to still be consumable, while red grapes do not give enough color and green tannins make the wine bitter. The interruption of the fermentation by cold winter led to the discovery of the process of secondary fermentation of champagne. The enrichment of some of the population created a craze for rare wines. This phenomenon, which was already responsible for the development of sherry in England, was reproduced in Central Europe. The discovery of the benefits of the noble rot on white grapes took place around 1650 in Hungary for the development of Tokaj wine. Hugh Johnson declared that the Tokaj of 3 centuries ago was the best sweet wine in the world. It was inherited from a long-standing winemaking tradition, developed with a grape whose exceptional maturity is due to a trade secret. This wine is also developed its qualities through process which long remained a secret in underground cellars of the winery. Prized by the House of Habsburg, Tokaj experienced profitable trading. Attempted imitation came to naught and the use of noble rot remained a secret. It was not until 120 years later that a method of very late harvest was experimented with on the steep banks of the Rhine. Its use in sauternes was attested in 1836 in the Château La Tour Blanche, but at the time very late harvest gave a very rich wine that required several years to age in barrels. Other regions were discovering secrets which would make them rich, so it was that Dom Pérignon was the legendary creator of champagne. In a northern vineyard he developed a special wine that would give rise to an exceptional passion for wine produced in a climate where it could not be expected for wine to reach maturity nor sufficient color. The fashion of drinking cheap dry white wine started in Paris in the 18th century. To evade the excise duty, the Parisians took the habit of going to drink the wine at the producer's premises outside the walls of the city. Cabarets opened their doors by the river, becoming guinguettes, so the wine that was drunk there was also called guinguet. This is a wine from the hills of the Seine-et-Marne, sour, but the conditions of transport of the time did not allow it to be used prematurely. Contemporary era champagne was created in the 18th century, but it was in the next century that its global expansion would occur. The crowned heads of Europe quickly made the wine stylish in their courts, although its production, necessarily in bottles, made a very expensive product. Hugh Johnson assigns an important diplomatic role to champagne. Talleyrand would have offered this wine at the negotiating table of the Congress of Vienna, using it to relax his partners in the discussions. The occupation of Champagne by Russian troops in 1815 publicized the sparkling wine to the Russian aristocracy. The Vovkiko booked her wine to her occupants, saying, "They drink today, tomorrow they will pay." The progress of the glass industry helped to democratize the use of the glass bottle. The production of sparkling wine increased dramatically and spread to the American continent. The technique of manufacturing was industrialized and other regions were inspired, but the reputation of Champagne suffered. The commercial flight of Champagne was a product of the Industrial Revolution that allowed it to be within the financial reach of the booking middle classes. The period of the 19th century before the arrival of phylloxera was a golden age of wine. The Industrial Revolution enriched a bourgeoisie clientele for the best wines, and the rural exodus to the factories created a large market for mass-produced wines. A prominent example for white wines was the viticulture in Germany. The feeling of freedom infused into the German winemakers under French occupation during the First Empire prevented the aristocracy and the clergy from recovering all the vineyards from which they were dispossessed. The practice of late harvest was widespread, and the more or less sweet wines gained balance against their always lively acidity. In 1872, the Geisenheim Grape Breeding Institute was created, and it was the source of a great amount of interbreeding, giving new varieties. The best known of these is the Müller-Thurgau. During the same period, Switzerland adopted, along the shores of Lake Geneva, vineyards predominantly producing white wine. During the 20th century, planting vines in countries where it was unknown was booming. However, it was shaky in places with high temperatures during fermentation. The use of larger containers creates problems of fermentation. The yeasts produce heat which cannot escape, and beyond 35 degrees Celsius the microorganisms begin to suffer and fermentation slows, then stops. After cooling the wine, a new addition of yeast is needed to resume fermentation. In California, the search for temperature control of fermentation matured. Applied to white wine, they revolutionized this type of wine. European wines, marked by the processes of crushing the grapes, are diametrically opposed to those very fruity wines marked by a refreshing liveliness. During the years 1960 to 1990, these methods of winemaking moved to Europe, and the use of refrigeration equipment is now widely used in almost all regions producing white wine. Geographical distribution, production, climatic zones. Many wine-producing countries produce white wine. However, the white grape needs less heat than red grapes to ripen. The lack of maturity of tannins is not a problem since they are not extracted in pressing. In addition, the taste balance is based on a significant liveliness due to the acidity. The grapes for the production of dry white wine are harvested just before ripening. These production conditions can result in a more northerly and mountainous location for the vineyard producing dry white wines. In Europe, German vineyards are predominantly white, as are the Swiss vineyards and the Luxembourg vineyards. In France, the northern half produces most of the white wines. In Spain, paradoxically, Castilla-La Mancha accounts for 50% of the Spanish vineyards, producing mostly white wine on a very large production area in a high-temperature zone. The Catalonia region produces a lot of white grapes which are transformed into sparkling wine called cava. The producing area for cava is 45,000 hectares out of a total producing area of 65,600 hectares. The Americas have developed both white and red wines, some of which are now recognized worldwide. White wines have have to conquer hostile territories where red wine dominates, such as the Rocky Mountains of Canada. In Canada, the technique of ice wine can produce exceptional wines in a climate which is apparently unfavorable. Canada is the largest producer of ice wine in the world. The warmer southern areas also produce white wine, but in a lower proportion. In addition, it is more often sweet of fortified wines, natural sweet wines or vinous wines, as in the case of vineyards around the Mediterranean. Geological zones. According to Claude and Lydia BorgQueen, red wines are well suited to soil based on limestone, while the best white wines are produced on soils over metamorphic rocks of volcanic rocks. In addition, white wines are also produced on land with a limestone subsoil, such as the chalky base of the Champagne wine region of the limestone under silicious marl of Chassagne-Montrachet form the backdrop to some of the most prestigious wines in world consumption. Grape varieties. Numerous varieties of grapes can be used to develop white wine. Some have achieved a strong reputation thanks to the marketing of a wine variety, Chardonnay B, originating from Burgundy and long sold under that name under the communal AOC Premier and Grand Cross. It has spread to many new producing countries who sell under the name of the grape. It can be made sparkling as still. It typically has a wider-bodied and rich citrus taste compared to other white wines. A common choice of food pairing for this wine is fishy poultry. It owes its world distribution to its quality in a very wide variety of regions of climate and geology, from France to the United States, Australia, and South Africa. Sauvignon B, originating from the center of France and the Bordeaux vineyards, it then spread to the vineyards of the southwest and the Loire Valley. Noticed by Anglo-Saxon consumers, it spread to growing regions in the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. It is remarkable for its typical vegetable, mineral aromas. It tends to be flat and lack fruit qualities. The dominating flavors range from sour green fruits such as of apple, pear and gooseberry through to tropical fruits such as melon, mango and black currant. A common food pairing for this wine is seafood, poultry, and salad. Riesling B originates from German vineyards. It is a grape that can be of high quality in a variety of soils provided that yield is limited and climate tends to a continental climate. This type is much lighter in comparison to other white wines and typically has a green apple aroma. Common food dishes that go well with Riesling are fish, chicken, and pork. Müller-Thurgau B, the most widely grown grape in Germany, which gives a fruity and well-balanced wine but that cannot be kept very long. Muscat B R or N, a group of varieties which have specific aromas. Typically made from Italian and Austrian-grown grapes, it can offer a sweet and fruity taste, shows best on its own without a food pairing. Petit Avena B originated in the Valais in Switzerland. Historical documents reveal it has been grown since the early 17th century, around 1602. Typically medium dry, this textured wine contains a generous amount of extract from its thick-skinned berries. Highly regarded by modest vintners, it has become the most frequently grown wine in the most prominent wine-growing region of Switzerland. The variety is often paired with Central and Northern European foods. Other grape varieties are less well known as they may be marketed under an appellation mixed with other varieties. RNB, a little-known variety, yet it is the most planted vat wine in the world with 390,000 hectares. It is second only to the Sultana. Grown almost exclusively in Spain, it is planted in a low density and produces a dry white wine consumed locally. Catarratto Bianco Comune B, a grape from southern Italy, it gives an aromatic and high-alcohol wine. It is one of the varieties of grape used to produce Marsala and Madeira. Chenin B, a French grape from the Loire Valley. It is also grown in South Africa. It yields a very fruity wine, sometimes mineral, dry, or sweet depending on the soil. It can be kept for a long time and take on the noble rot. Macabeo B, a Spanish grape. It is used to develop cava, the Spanish sparkling wine. It is also grown in the vineyards of Languedoc-Roussillon in France. Its wine is dry and fruity and yields a fortified wine. Semillon B, a grape originally from Bordeaux vineyards. It is the main variety used for sweet wines from Bordeaux and Bergerac due to its ability to take the noble rot. It possesses a fig-like characteristic and is often paired with Sauvignon Blanc to mellow its strong berry-like flavors. Trebbiano Bianco Eugeni Blanc B, an Italian grape variety giving a fairly neutral wine. In France this wine is usually distilled to yield cognac or armagnac. Viognier B, a French grape from the Rhone Valley. It has been planted in California since the 2000s. It yields a very fruity and complex wine. Grenache Blanc B. This is the white form of Grenache Blanc, a variety of quality. It produces fine, full-bodied dry wines, albeit with sometimes deficient acidity. It also provides natural sweet wines of high quality. Some varieties with colored skins are also used to produce white wines. Gewürztraminer. This grape has a pink skin, vinified in white. This is a very aromatic grape with typical aromas reminiscent of pink flowers and lychees. It is grown all over the Alps. It is an aromatic mutation of Traminer. Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier. These grapes are used for the development of champagne and rose wines. Pinot Gris is planted extensively in the Venice region of Italy. The color of these grapes range from a copper yellow to light pink. It typically has a crisp, fruity flavor which allows for a versatile food pairing. Sauvignon Gris G, used to make rosé from Sauvignon Blanc. It has a superior richness in sugar and heavier aromas. It is particularly well suited to the production of sweet wines. Grenache Gris G. This is the rosé form of Grenache. It is used in the amber versions of Grenache from River Salties AOC, a natural sweet wine white with a darker color from oxidation.